As the heated presidential race sprints to the finish line, the risk to election workers feels greater than ever.
We're implementing emergency badges for our election officials.
Derek Bowens runs elections in Durham, North Carolina. He tells me the county has a new high-tech facility. That's after a rise in threats against election workers nationwide.
Badge access, cameras, duress buttons, bulletproof glass, ballistic doors, a separate mail room with a separate exhaust system to deal with potential hazardous substances.
Bowens isn't the only one taking these extreme measures. A May 2024 survey from the Brennan Center for Justice shows 92% of election administrators increased security for voters and workers.
I think there's no cost too big to make sure we're in a proper position to respond to incidents and to protect our workforce.
The same survey reveals nearly 40% of election officials have experienced threats, harassment, or abuse this year. Bowen says his team had a close call during the primaries when a voter showed up at a polling site after it closed.
And they were told rightfully by the election official that polls have closed, you can't come in and vote. That's, a requirement under North Carolina law. And they made the comment, if I can't vote with a ballot, I'll vote with a bullet.
Fortunately, no one was hurt during that incident. But during a recent election security roundtable, administrators talked about another potential concern: guns near polling places. Currently, more than 20 states in Washington, D.C. limit firearms at these sites.
Most of our polling places are schools, churches, city halls, libraries. These are all buildings that are generally gun-free zones to begin with.
In some states, voters may see more law enforcement during early voting and on Election Day.
We may not have somebody at every location because we don't want to, be intimidating, but we do have the local law enforcement knows where all the polling locations are.
Zach Manifold is the election supervisor in Gwinnett County, Georgia. In neighboring Fulton County, threats to 2 poll workers made national headlines after false accusations of rigging the state's 2020 election results. Manifold says he's seen an impact on staff turnover.
I think we're all making progress. I think it's been a rebuild over the last 3 years. It's exciting, but it's also a lot of learning and a lot of training. And so it's just been trying to rebuild that knowledge lost.
Now Manifold says they will have 2,000 poll workers for Election Day.
We rely on your local community, the people that live in your neighborhood, to run your polling location.
Some election officials tell me their biggest concern isn't November 5th. Instead, they're worried about what could happen after Election Day. That's why some places like Durham County, North Carolina, will have armed security on site as workers certify votes just in case there are any disruptions. In Washington, Kirsten Garris, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
Just because English isn't your first language doesn't mean your vote doesn't count.
This Instagram video is just one way the nonpartisan League of Women Voters is trying to correct false rumors about the voting process. The group also runs Vote 411, an online voter guide platform, and it relies on support from members on the ground.
Here's the troubles that we encountered. Here are the things that went really smooth, just so people have an idea of what they may encounter as they are trying to vote.
The organization's CEO, Selena Stewart, says this year she's also worried about the use of AI deepfakes to spread those inaccurate messages.
We have dedicated staff to really be looking at the news and things that are coming out to see where the mis and disinformation is happening and trying to combat that with accurate information.
Welcome, everyone.
Earlier this year, senators held a hearing about cracking down on AI deepfakes in elections.
Artificial intelligence is already being used to interfere with our elections, sowing lies about candidates and suppressing the vote.
At least 20 states have passed laws regulating deepfake use around elections, but Congress has yet to vote on the issue.
We're going to have an electoral disaster before Congress realizes, gee, we really should do something to give the public some sense of safety, some sense of certainty that what they're seeing and hearing is actually real.
At local polling places, election officials continue battling the perception of voter fraud ever since former President Donald Trump claimed the 2020 election was stolen from him. Despite no evidence of widespread fraud or rigged voting machines 4 years ago, many local administrators have increased transparency at their offices to combat misinformation.
With this new facility, you can actually come in and watch every single ballot be counted. You can watch results be uploaded. And of course, this could happen before. The difference now is we have transparency glass where our workers are protected, but people can have full visibility as to the work that's being done there.
Derek Bowens runs elections in Durham County, North Carolina. He says his team had residents come in to watch the preparation of absentee ballots earlier this year.
And they were very surprised that that process was open, that it was bipartisan. Our workers are identified with party vests, so you can see that you have bipartisanship handling ballots.
And Lindsay, election administrators also want to stress to voters that you have to be patient as these results come in, and that's because it could take a few days, not hours, before we know who will become the next president of the United States. Lindsay?
Yeah, we always want to know the night of. It often is not the case. Thank you, Kirsten Garris, reporting live from D.C.
From checking equipment to cybersecurity improvements, state election officials tell Congress they've been working for months to secure voting ahead of Election Day.
The rigorous testing we conduct gives us the ability to eliminate problems before ballots are cast.
We can ask the good guys to try to hack us and then tell us where there are holes in our fence so that we can patch those.
And election leaders say they're prepared for November 5th.
And maybe I'm a little biased, but I have never seen a more prepared elections community than ever before.
Carolina Lopez runs the Partnership for Large Election Jurisdictions, also known as PLEDGE. The organization connects election officials from across the country to help them exchange ideas and best practices.
What happens if, the election night's results page goes down for 5 seconds? What do you do? These individuals have a playbook, a really robust playbook to make sure that the show must go on, and it will.
And though the U.S. Election Assistance Commission expects more than 98% of voters to cast a paper ballot this year, some internet security experts warn these threats are constantly evolving.
It's both foreign and domestic actors that are responsible for these attacks.
Marcy Andino works with the Election Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center. Her team helps election officials stay a step ahead of cyber hackers and prevent the spread of malicious activity.
We can identify trends, and in doing so, we send out alerts. We also provide them with tools so that they can become more proficient in protecting against cyber threats.
She says some of the biggest threats are ransomware attacks, phishing attempts, and new AI technologies.
Both deepfakes in the form of robocalls and videos being used in the election space.
Unlike other events, you can't move or change Election Day. And that's why election administrators say they're prepared for whatever comes their way. In Washington, I'm Kirsten Garris for your local station, Boston 25 News.